This is a conversation and continuing education opportunity put on by the Washington State Library, which is a division of the Secretary of State at the State of Washington, and we are funded by the IMLA slides. And today, I'm Carolyn Peterson, and I'll be your facilitator. Jennifer Fenton, who normally co-facilitates with me, is off lounging on a beach in Hawaii someplace. So we're going to send envious thoughts her way. But one thing I did want to say is David has requested that you hold your questions, but you know, as they occur to you, type them in chat, and it'll be my responsibility to note them. And so I will read them as at the end of the time. So as a question occurs to you, please type it in chat, and then I will bring it up to David at the very end of the presentation. And I did want to say, here is your opportunity to write down both the phone numbers and the emails of our two technical producers. We are more than happy to, if suddenly something, you drop off or something happens and you can't figure out how to get back into the session, please contact either Jeremy or Joe. They'll be more than happy to help you. And you notice Jeremy's put his phone number and email in the chat. So I think with no further ado, again, I also wanted to give a nod to our funder, our federal funder. We are funded here, library development at the Washington State Library is funded by the Institution of Museum and Library Services, and they give us grants to help the development of libraries throughout Washington State. And so we thank you for joining us. And so now, oops, I need one more thing. I went back. There we go. We need you to do this in chat. Our Office of Federal Management at the State, Federal Management, so try Financial Management at the state asks us to keep these statistics. So now, at this point in time, will you please chat and type in chat your name and the library organization that you are associated with. And if you are a student or if you're, just a freelancer, that's fine. And please type that in. So go ahead and type. I see everybody's typing away. Thank you. We appreciate that. So just go right ahead. Great. I'm seeing we've got lots of people from a variety of places, and we're glad for that. Okay, good. Lots of folks coming in from all over the country. We appreciate that. All right. So as these are typing through, it's fun to see them scroll by. So now I'm going to introduce David Junius, and he's our program presenter today. And he's the volunteer and outreach manager at the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. And he works with individuals, organizations, and companies to help provide services for folks who have sight difficulties. He has worked and other disabilities where it's difficult to where they need help assisting. He's worked for such organizations as the American Red Cross, the University of California, and Northwest Harvest. And he has his Master's of Library and Information Science from the University of Washington. So with no further ado, I will turn the program over to David. And thank you again for your willingness to share your
thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Jeremy. This is, thanks for joining us today, and this is Events for Almost Everyone. I am David Junius. I was pictured on the previous slide. And before we start, can we go up to the little checkbox, and everyone who can hear me, please hit the green yes check, so I know that I'm heard. Okay, good. This thing is on. Okay, good. So as Carolyn said, I am the Volunteer Services and Outreach Manager at the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library, or WTABL as we call it. So if I say WTABL, that's what I'm referring to. And for those of you who don't know us, and I'm going to read from the screen here, WTABL endeavors to build community and provide equal access to information and reading materials for Washington residents unable to read standard print. So as Carolyn was saying, low vision, no vision, people with physical disability that precludes them from holding a book or turning a page. We provide a public library service. And we are part of the Washington State Library. And we're also part of the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, which is part of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., the other Washington. And we're a statewide service that largely provides its services through the postal system, since the majority of our patrons live outside of Seattle and King County. And we are one of about 55 of our kind of libraries around the U.S. University, the United States of America. And we provide accessible materials in the form of talking books, Braille, and large print. And we create talking books and Braille books at our library, and we run a radio reading service, which is like the periodical section of our library. And we have 10,000 patrons statewide, and we run on the power of 300 volunteers working with annually. And then we also are able to do interlibrary loans with the other 55 libraries around the country. And we also have downloadable books from our website, and there are also downloadable books from the National Library Service website. So we make a lot of our materials available in different ways. So since the majority of our patrons live outside of our immediate area, we don't get as much patron and visitor traffic as a public library might. Whatever event activity we can generate is worth trying and is usually a relative success. And as my blurb for this webinar states, events can be an excellent way to connect with patrons, volunteers, your partnering organizations, and your surrounding neighborhood. And they build goodwill, they educate about your services, and add to your list of annual successes. And this presentation will share the rudiments of low and no-cost events for which the idea and spirit behind them are as important as the successful execution of those events. And Watauble has a staff that enjoys putting on events, and I have 2 events that I produce in April and May that I'll be talking about. And there are several large and small ones during the summer that Mandy, our youth service librarian, does, and our executive assistant, Rocio, also does a great job planning seasonal potlucks and one-off events like a clothing swap that I'll mention. So it's great to have people interested in it so that it doesn't all fall on one person. And if there is only one person, you may want to get a committee together of interested people, but that may open a whole Pandora's box of issues that I'll mention later. And so there will be 3 areas that I'll talk about today, events that are mission-based, program-based, and kind of in a more ad hoc and inventive column. We are very professional in what we do, but we have a grassroots feel to us because we create recorded books in Braille here and collaborate with nonprofits in training situations and work with a lot of, physically and we just have a diverse group of volunteers and staff here. So we want our events to be inclusive, and because we're a government agency, we don't want to be too showy in what we do. And I like to be thrifty, so I will always find old stocks of paper to print on, paper that has been bought over the last several years and just kind of rebought. Same with disposable cutlery and plates that have been bought and rebought so that there are stashes in the storage closet, so I'm always trying to filter through that and make sure that we're getting stuff used so we don't have to rebuy it again. And we try to get small donations from businesses, and sometimes we have an open invitation for attendees to bring something to share, kind of a potluck. But we don't do this too often because there is donor fatigue after a while, and so we don't want people to think that every time they're invited they have to bring something. But people are grateful to our library, and they're happy to participate on many levels. So oftentimes they are willing to to bring something to share, bring a plate to share. And we've been asking people to speak at our events, mostly local authors and people associated with the Washington State government, since the State Library is part of the Office of the Secretary of State. And people are very honored to be asked, and for our last 3 volunteer events, we have had authors that have been engaging and are very impressed by what we do, so that really, it's a nice little reciprocal admiration there. And once in a while, a musical performer, for example, for the Youth Summer Reading Program, will have a fee that you really can't get around, but if you can try to negotiate and pay what you can, then if you have to pay for something, you feel better by knowing that most of the time you're getting people to appear out of the goodness of their hearts as a donation to your library. Early on, we had a guest speaker for an event, and there was an honorarium needed, which was fun at the time. But we've realized that we can since, we since have gotten very good people to speak for free. And I will also use outreach as a version of events that bring people together and educate about your services. So inviting people, feeding people, including people in the planning, and they all help build goodwill. And early on, you may feel vulnerable as you start to plan events and hoping people attend, but after a few tries, you'll build a reputation for good events. And if people aren't showing up, you can survey them and see what they like, and then they'd have no excuse not to attend. So that's something to consider there. So Watable's premier event is the 10 Squared event, and I call it premier because it's invitation only, and each year opens a new potential to succeed or fail. When the event started 9 years ago, we were fortunate to have the better part of 10 centenarians, 100-year-old and older patrons, who had the ability and resources to come to the library the day before Mother's Day and attend a patron appreciation event. And this went on for a few years, and then those centenarians weren't able to make it, and then we're adding 30 or so new centenarians to the 10 Squared roster every year, but now only 3 or 4 are able to attend the event, so it becomes a return on investment scenario. And when I start planning and getting stuff together a few months before so that the time is spread out, so it doesn't seem like a huge investment of time all at one time. And the financial outlay is really only a few $100s, but the spirit of the event, celebrating these 3 centenarians pictured here, now comes up against the fact that it's a low turnout event. And the National Library Service instituted this event, and out of the 55 libraries from the National Library Service like us, only 12 of them that we're aware of are really holding the event and posting photos on the National Library Service website. So I consider us lucky to be able to have done 9 of these events, but it is something that generates a lot of interest from 2 or 3 of our board members and some staff from the Secretary of State's office and State Library, and it also shows respect for our eldest patrons. So that's something to consider in keeping it going. But I will discuss this in a moment. During a week in April, there is a National Volunteer Appreciation Week, and for many years before I arrived here 5 years ago, it was a week-long kind of open house, brunch, lunch, open table, which has since become a 90-minute program on one day with a guest speaker. And we had a local author, Kevin O'Brien, kind of a mystery thriller writer. He's pictured here with 2 volunteer sisters, and they're pictured on the left-hand side there. And you can also see our Secretary of State welcoming everyone via video when she wasn't able to attend at the last minute, and that's in the upper right corner. And volunteers are aware of how lean we run and are receptive to the effort that is evident in putting the event on. I mentioned the grassroots nature of Watable in a lot of ways, and so kind of a homemade event really resonates with our volunteers and staff and our patrons. And getting volunteers involved with events is both appreciation and also gets them more involved with the library. And we have maybe 10% of our volunteers who are also patrons. So events give more of a chance for volunteers to interact with the patrons we serve and see firsthand what we do and who we're serving. Mission specific, for example, in 2009, January, we had a Braille bicentennial birthday open house, and many people from state organizations of the blind and other partnering organizations came in. And we also had a very nice cake donated by a high-end market down the street that has used our conference room for new staff trainings. And so it's good to approach such partners for in-kind donations, and because we're being good neighbors by having them use our space, and so they can be good neighbors as well if they're aware of how they can participate. So just kind of keeping that line of communication open. And pictured in the lower left-hand side is a little sculpture from a tactile art show that we had, and it had an opening event, and our conference room became a gallery for a week, and we got some press from the Seattle Times, so that was really wonderful. But recruiting artists for the next year was difficult, and so plans for a second one were shelved. And it's a good example that we can have a success and understand that it doesn't need to be an ongoing thing if the environment isn't conducive and if it's just a lot of trying to seek out people becomes more time than is really needed, and is getting people off of other work. So that's always something to be aware of. One event that was a hit that spun off an ongoing mini event was the National Library Service 80th year celebration that we had in 2011. The staff wore period costumes from the 1930s, and The Good Earth by Pearl Buck was discussed in a book club led by our assistant director Amy, who is pictured on the lower right. And The Good Earth was one of the first books that the National Library Service put out as a talking book back in the early 30s. I think it was a big 1931 bestseller. And the book club has since been happening quarterly with a different staff member choosing the book and leading a discussion. And we've had 10 book clubs since its inception, and we advertise it pretty broadly on Facebook. And we get a low turnout from patrons because statewide, being a statewide service, many people don't live in Seattle and maybe can't travel easily because of disabilities. But staff and volunteers really get into it, and it expands the skill set of the book club leaders. So someone who works in shipping in the stacks, doing their circulation, being able to lead a discussion on a book is a big feather in their cap, and makes them feel like they're part of the bigger mission of the library here. And there's no budget for the Brown Bag Book Club, so people are, as it says, they're bringing their lunch. But as with the potlucks, the people presenting the book club, leading the discussion, or other people might bring cookies or sandwiches or something like that. So people are very generous when it comes to that because of the spirit behind it. And in October of 2013, the State Library here will celebrate its 160th year. And I'm on the planning committee representing Watauble, and so we'll see what we can do to hook into a larger event. And so it'll probably be, an on-site gallery, kind of talking about art history, and then how we link into the State Library. So hooking into a larger event is another way to think about it, especially when you've got a state library that's got a big focus on its history. And since there are a few libraries around the state, physically apart from the state library campus in Tumwater, Olympia, every site will have a chance to show off its event planning. And so that'll be very interesting, and we look forward to seeing how that works out. Oops. There we go. So program-specific events. Program or department-specific events are always a great way to show off your library and the unique opportunities that you have, both for your patrons and your volunteers. And I've mentioned our youth service librarian doing summer reading program events, and her successful kickoff event from last month is pictured on the bottom left. So she had a great turnout for that. And pictured on the right is an example of a work project being made into an event. There was a large section of shelving that needed to be dismantled to free up some workspace and consolidate our collection in this big area where all of our talking books and Braille are kept in the back of our building. So all over the course of the morning, the shelving was taken out, and after a pizza lunch, which Watauble provided, staff and volunteers took turns grinding down floor bolts, and Mara, one of our shipping pages, is seen doing that in the lower right. And pictures of all this went on Facebook and were a big hit. So it's the way you present it that can add this work project into your events column. And it was akin to the seasonal potlucks, only we have physical labor and power tools being added to the mix. So it really, became a kind of novel thing, and really showed that we've got this great kind of grassroots spirit where we just kind of did the work ourselves and got down and got dirty with a lot of sparks flying, kind of thing. And the row of people pictured below the line where it says Braille class graduation. This was the group that started the Braille class last fall that we give every year. And we give certificates out to people who complete the 9-month class. But in a different setting, I could see there being a more formal graduation celebration. And there are annual meetings for our off-site Braille transcribers, so they do get some event time that is unique to their experience at Watauble. But certainly kind of keeping in mind, how do we include everyone? How do we make it special for them? Braille is one of those kind of it's a 9-month class and very work intensive. So we just want to make sure that they're getting some fun out of it too, in addition to learning how to transcribe Braille and help our patrons. And let's see here. Ideally, we plan events on Thursday, which is Watauble's busiest volunteer day. So we have like a set group of people that we can always expect. Some event opportunities emerge, like getting the state poet of Washington, the state poet laureate, to come read, and that's pictured on the left side of the screen. And she got to invite some colleagues to read as well. And afterward, we got an interview for our literary news program on our radio reading service. So we were able to leverage a lot of output for that event. And that clothing swap I mentioned earlier is pictured, has a little picture in the upper right corner there with Tyler holding up a very nice bright shirt. And so that was our conference room becoming a browsing area where people could bring or take or trade clothes that they didn't need anymore, didn't want anymore. And it was a very spirited event, and really big hit on Facebook with all the photos that we took. And all of the non-claimed items were picked up by a local nonprofit, and so we were partnering with the community that way. So on many different levels, we did a great event spearheaded by Rocio. Other ad hoc examples include our past Secretary of State coming in to help decorate our holiday tree, which was an annual thing that he would do, and that's pictured in the upper middle there. Or even an impromptu recognition of Maurice Sendak when he passed away in May of 2012, and that's in the lower right there. So our director Danielle kind of read some passages from Where the Wild Things Are, and just kind of everybody gave out a big roar in appreciation for Sendak. So that was really nice. And it says ERRS closing on the list on the screen. And at the end of 2011, we curtailed our radio reading service due to budget cuts, and that left many volunteers without an assignment, about 60 or 70 people. And it was a very emotionally wrought time, but we gave a nice farewell party that softened the blow a little, and it was extremely well attended and gave people a chance to go around the room and talk about their feelings about the radio service and what it means and meant to them. And we did get some of our volunteers re-engaged with us, and so that was certainly helped by showing them respect for their past work with that farewell event. So negatives can be made into positives. So even if it's a sad time, events can do a lot. Events that maybe aren't being entrepreneurial in kind of spinning people being in our library is a thing that I like to do, because we don't get a lot of patrons or visitors, being a mail order service mostly. So I get any photos that I can as appropriate, any tours that come through, any visitors from the National Library Service or other libraries. And looking at work parties as an event coming in is a way to make a big deal about visitors, which makes them feel great and makes your library look like a very vibrant place. And so we will get corporations or other nonprofit groups coming in. We will give them a tour. We'll train them in work tasks that usually help our shipping and circulation. They usually bring in lunch if they're here all day, and so they kind of have a little nice break in our conference room. And then I take a lot of photos, put them on Facebook. And then, many times the person will, some people in the work group will be taking photos of their own, and then they always kind of say, well, can we get the ones that you took, so that, there's, just a lot more focus on them as opposed to, people having to work and be photo takers and stuff like that. So, so they really do appreciate the stuff being on Facebook. And so it really becomes an event to them. So it's kind of looking at it from another angle and just saying that this is, this is something that we can celebrate as being, an event for us too, because we were able to get these folks in. And every May there's a National Library Snapshot Day, and that's the next bullet there, which is a virtual event where any and all libraries can take photos of a day in the life of their library and share them online, and put in captions and put hashtags on them to kind of group them in different themes. So really it's putting your best your best face on, and presenting your library as you think would be the best to make you the most outstanding. So I think that's a great opportunity for everyone to participate in some kind of virtual event. And speaking of virtual events, in May, this past May, a community foundation in Spokane included Watauble in an online contest where Watauble supporters went to a website and placed cartoon apples in a basket over a month's time. And our team put 108% more apples in our basket than in the competitor's basket, and so the apple of our eyes poster pictured on the lower left was part of the online thanks that we gave, and we got $250, which may not be a lot, but we really celebrated the process of pulling ahead or falling back and needing more apples. We celebrated that process on our Facebook page. and through our listserv, which got people excited and generated a lot of awareness about our library. And I mentioned the book club earlier, and for the next one on September 5th at noon, we are discussing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and we will have a phone-in component for the first time. So if you want to join us, you can contact me at the information at the end of this presentation. And so it's an 800 number to call in, and there's a little passcode. Since the majority of our patrons, live outside of our immediate Puget Sound area, the phone-in component is a great addition to the book club. So I'm glad that we're getting that going. And then lastly, there are the seasonal potlucks, which help build morale. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes people bring something, sometimes they don't. But it all kind of comes out at the end, and we have more than enough, and people do not feel like they're being put upon or being asked too often. So that's a nice. You just kind of get a sense of what is the most the best way to get people engaged, and to let them know that their participation is appreciated. How to and best practices. In the beginning of my time at Watauble, I formed committees for the two events, the two big events, the volunteer event and the 10 Squared event. And it was a great exercise in being inclusive and team building and running a committee. But after the first event or two, I realized it was just easier to just just oversee and execute the few small duties that were needed. And it's easy to say, let's do a big rock concert benefit, but if the person saying it has nothing to really bring to the table to make that happen, like an inroad to a promoter who is looking for a charitable beneficiary, then it's just ideas, and ideas need to be backed up because there are a lot of great ideas, but just kind of saying ideas and not really being able to do anything to that end, it's just kind of taking up time. And that's one of the things that can come out of the Pandora's box of committee work. So just basically saying, you've been asked to be on this committee because, of what the committee chair is feeling can be, added to by that person, skill sets and stuff like that. So, really kind of building a good committee that is also an action committee. And among your staff and volunteers, however, you may have connections to potential donors, and then putting a word in with potential donors can help you get an event planned. For example, and all three of these examples are from our centenarian tea. We have a staffer's niece who managed a floral department at a grocery store and knew that there would be extra stock to spare around Mother's Day. So she was able to pull some things aside, knowing that in 3 days they'd be wilted anyway. So we were able to get a lot of free floral, and she was also able to make some very nice boutonnieres and corsages for us, which was an added benefit. And then we also have a staffer who has a neighbor who's a caterer who can really create a nice spread for cost. And so basically she's donating her time and just charging us for the food, which is a big plus. And that takes a lot of the pressure off of us to look for platters of food, which is what we were doing for many years, or making it all ourselves, which was a big undertaking. And then our volunteer, we have a volunteer in our Braille department who has an antique teacup collection, and so she was able to loan us 20 or 30 services of cups and saucers and nice antique teapots. So really put a lot of nice, a nice touch, real touch to, especially when you're celebrating 100-year-old patrons. It's nice to have something that is, kind of, the same. Comes from the same time that they're from, so that's always nice. And be sure to do thank you letters, follow-up thank you letters for donations to show that you're on top of that process. And if you have a 501c3 charitable status where donations are tax deductible, you give the donor that option to take a donation, take a tax deduction or not. And I would err on the side of thank you letters regardless of what is given or its value. It's fundraising, but it's also friend-raising, and friends say thank you if you want to keep them, if they want to keep their friends. So you need to thank. Working backwards in your planning, I get an early enough start to get in a store's funding cycle in time for a donation. If you go to someone's website, they say, make sure that you ask us for this within 60 days of the, 60 days or more, from the date of the event. And most donors will have a once-a-year rule. So be sure to use the best match for your needs. And if you have Volunteers and patrons who come into the library often, sending invitations and advertising a month or two ahead of time is great, going from save the date notices online, and then posters with details, and really even just word of mouth, because we've got the 300 volunteers, and a fraction of that number is going to be able to come to the event, but the people that are recurring guests at your event, you can talk to them and just kind of say, hey, be sure to try to be here. And people really do appreciate being asked in person as well. And for the Braille open house that we had that I mentioned a few slides back, we papered the neighborhood with flyers to kind of introduce us to people who didn't know about us, and a lot of new businesses have opened in the South Lake Union area where we are, where there's a lot of growth. And only one person from the neighborhood came in, but in a public library setting, I would expect more traffic, even if people weren't initially coming for the event. They just kind of came to be at the library, and the event happened to be happening. So they could, if it's an open house, they could certainly hook into that. And the more often you do an event, and looking at the make lists checkbox here, you start to get a feel of when things need to happen after a few times of doing it. But it does help to make lists of deadlines and reminders, like when you need to make follow-up calls, or when the invitation needs to go in the mail, stuff like that. And then with in-kind donations, we get a mix of gift cards that can be used anytime. We'll put in a request, and they'll say, come by and we'll give you a $100 gift card, and it's good forever. And then there are other in-kind donations that we get where they say, come in the day before or the day of, and you've got $100 to spend, and basically you're getting it all right then. So having an idea of what food item can come from which source ahead of time can keep you from getting what you may not need to pay for. For example, we get a very small donation. I mean, $25 is not small, but it's a high-end grocery market. And so, we just kind of say, well, we'll hold this in reserve for another event if we need it, but we can definitely get the creamer and the half and half for the coffee that we'll need for this one, because it's only going to be, it's not going to be any more expensive than anywhere else. So just kind of seeing, what you need to get when, and what you have available to you. And if you do have a small budget of cash and a food service store, kind of a restaurant service store, where you can get restaurant-sized packages of food that can fill gaps for a little bit of money. So it's really just kind of saying, here's what we need, here's what we've got available to us, and here's where we can, fill it in. And it's worth mentioning that we always have vegetarian and vegan options, and we label food for allergies, and we try to make the food audience appropriate, like soft food for the centenarians, and no nuts for the youth patrons, things like that, so just being mindful. And identify, going to the next bullet there, identify on your staff and maybe volunteers who can help set up and run the event. So it's really, and not going to the same people too often, so just kind of, having a good pool to draw from, and seeing where, this person likes working with kids, so we'll have her, work on the youth events, and then this person really admires the centenarian, so we'll have him work with the centenarian, stuff like that. And so it gives, like the book club helping with events, gives staff and volunteers a chance to use different skills and add to their skill set and their job description, their own job description here. And we should all have Plan Bs, going to the last bullet here. It's always good to have a Plan B if a donor does not come through. The inclined floral for the centenarian event that I was mentioning before was always a last-minute commitment, and it did not come through this past May. So we spent $100 on flowers and supplies and made corsages by hand, and we got an instructional video from the internet, which was very helpful. And we created mixed bouquets for the tables, and they all came out very well. But you can see on the right-hand side here, the corsage was made with 3 or 4 roses, and after a while it was just too heavy. So we now, because basically I wanted to use up all the corsages that we had purchased, so that we just didn't have stray roses around the place. So now we know how to that we need to buy fewer roses and make smaller corsages. So we are always learning and adjusting. And also, I have been very lucky to have great in-kind donors for multiple years, but I realize realize that I am going back to the same well too many times. So before I get to planning mode for early next year, I will spend the latter part of this year starting to identify and approach new in-kind partners. So, give the people a break. And when we didn't, when the floral donor did not come through, it wasn't said, but I can imagine that there's some donor fatigue there. Just kind of, stop returning and maybe give a year off before asking again. Always good to know. Budgets. If you are good at in-kind fundraising, you can make a better case to use cash if needed, such as with the restaurant supply place, getting all the food donated, but needing to buy a last-minute huge $7 can of fruit cocktail to add one more thing to the buffet table for the brunch. So that's so it's good to again be strategic about this is what we don't need to spend, this is what we should spend, or it's okay to spend, and and there's a good reason for it, for cash. If you have a good rapport with the donor, maybe you can say, this is what we have to work with budget-wise. Could you make it a partial donation if we paid for this much? So the let's make a deal bullet there. And just be. I think having a good rapport is the main thing. And I think certainly we're very lucky that our staff member with the catering neighbor, being brought into the mix was really wonderful. But so just being able to be respectful and just say, here's what we've got. Let's make a deal if we can. However, in-kind donors want to be consistent and fair to everyone who asks them, and they do have rules. So it is usually best to accept a no to a request and have enough resources to draw upon to make the event happen without putting a burden on your bottom line cash-wise and not spending too much time seeking donations. So, getting an early start, as I said a few slides back, just making sure that you've got a good pool and, you're identifying anybody who could potentially help with product or services. And depending on your accounting department, they may need to get a bid or a proposal in order to bring in outside vendors for an event, be it food or performers. And something may be coming out of one meeting with meals budget line or out of a volunteer recognition budget line. So as you go along in planning, make sure that you're keeping it as clear as possible for yourself about which funds are being brought from where, and transparent with anyone in charge of funds. So it shows that you're not just, so that you've got a good understanding of what needs to be done from the business and administration side. Attendance. There is a wedding website that I found that said that for a guest list of 200 or fewer invited, approximately 15 to 20% will not attend. And after a few years of doing the volunteer event, I learned that we would have a steady turnout of between 50 and 75 people. So we were always good to ask for enough food and provide a good array of stuff. But we would, for our volunteer event, I would invite 250 people, basically looking through our volunteer database and selecting the people who had done volunteer work, at least 8 hours of volunteer work in the past calendar year, and that would be about 250 people, to be sent to and advertised to, and maybe 60 people would show up, and so 75 to 80% of the people didn't, which is kind of the polar opposite of the wedding rule of thumb, but that's our rule of thumb, and so it may take a few tries to get it down, but I think where it's where it's a volunteer event and you're planning it on the right day and you've got a good attraction, quote unquote, in a local author, and after having done 3 of them, people are looking forward to who's going to speak next, which author is going to be the next person, and they've all been very different, so that's a good little way to get people interested in attending. And there is a bagel store down the street from us that we can ask a few weeks in advance for the day olds from the night before. So we get 100 bagels donated, and they're still good. And then we card people up with that, and then add to that foundation with spreads and cream cheese and jelly and brunch additions and stuff like that. So it is a very nice, and it's one of those things that we kind of go, oh, it's bagels again. But for the volunteers, they do this once a year with us, and so they're getting bagels once a year with us. So it's not, it might seem like constant bagels, from our end, but for them it's a treat. And this year's volunteer event was actually closer to lunch So we got the bagels still, but we put a $100 donation to work on some well-priced deli platters of the roll-up Aram sandwiches that also provided bulk, but it gave a lot more substantial, protein instead of, cream cheese and jellies and stuff like that that would then live in our refrigerator in our break room for months on end. So really kind of mixing it up and saying, let's try this, let's try this new thing this year and see how it goes, and if that's we can constantly adjust and recreate and make it special for the volunteers. And for the 10 Squared event, for the centenarians, it's invitation only, as I mentioned, so RSVPs are crucial. So going to the last bullet here, because we do want to get an accurate count for the catering that we're getting and that we're paying for. But we also want to be nimble and in being able to invite volunteers and other patrons as additional honored guests in case the centenarian turnout is going to be low. So instead of having 10 people in an event, we can still get 30 people to turn out if we're able to get volunteers and our patrons who have been kind of a little bit more involved with us, either by working on new projects or coming into the library more often. So they kind of rise to the they're more clear on our radar scope. So maybe we ask them. For example, in a couple of issues back of our Reading Matters newsletter, one of our radio reading service volunteers was highlighted, and so he was kind of on my radar scope to invite him and his wife to the event, and he came and he really enjoyed it. So it's nice, a little extra recognition for the volunteers. And as I mentioned before, we were fortunate when the 10 Squared event started 9 years ago to have many centenarians who were local and able to make it, but we've been getting 2 or 3 or 4 attending in the last few years. So while it's a great event, it may be time to recognize the centenarians a different way with personal visits and actually doing personal outreach. So the locals who can't make it can get a personal visit, and then the rest of the centenarians around the state who would probably not be coming to Seattle for that event anyway will still get mailed the same mailed recognition of a letter or certificate and a pin from the National Library Service. And if there is an outreach visit to another part of the state, maybe that delivery of recognition can be grouped so that that patron on the other side of Washington who would never be able to come physically to the 10 Squared high tea, is finally able to get something in person and actually get a visit from Watauble and our staff. So it's we do have a patron advisory council, as I mentioned, with the board members who like to be attending that event. So maybe getting some of the council members who are unable to make the event, get them involved in that recognition as well if we do outreach to deliver the certificates around the state. So another way of thinking about it. Posters and programs can be done in-house and show a good faith effort that you're casting a wide net in announcing the event and getting people to come. And this is especially nice if you have a guest speaker. And Kevin O'Brien, pictured at the bottom there, was pleased to get a copy of the poster pictured, and the poet laureate pictured on the poster in the center, upper center, took several of the buck slip programs for her files, and so it was very kind of simple and elegant, and really went off well. So it's nice to show that we're creating little memories for their scrapbook too. And on the right is an image of our last 10 Squared event program, and you can see at the bottom that it says thanks to our partners who are the donors and in-kind donors, and then also thanks to our staff who are the staff that volunteered at the event. And giving credit to volunteers and donors in print goes a long way. And the people who donate who lend us the tea cups and saucers and teapots, they always kind of poo-poo it when I say, oh, thank you so much and here's your name. But when I give them the program and they see their name, you can tell that it means something to them. So that's always nice to remember that it does. Seeing their name in print goes a long way. Also, certificates are easy and inexpensive and give something for the guest speaker to receive as a thanks, which is especially nice for speakers working without an honorarium. We had mugs with our logo emblazoned on them, and certificates and bookmarks, and we have a lot of outreach specific to our bookmarks and things like that that are specific to our services that we give out. So kind of giving a little swag bag to people really makes them feel like we're recognizing them in a good way, in a novel way, because they're not getting Braille stuff from other places that they speak. So it's good to make sure that we're unique in their eyes. And also, whenever we can with these materials, we make them accessible in large print with high contrast for our low vision guests, and Braille if we know that attendees will need that format. And I just want to make a pitch here. If anyone listening would like advice on making their materials accessible in paper or electronic form, contact our library and we will be happy to help and guide you and give you advice if you need it. And outreach outside the library. Having an outreach component to your library can open opportunities to be part of other events that you can claim as part of your external event work. I was a theater person back in high school and college, and none of the shows I was in would have been the same if I weren't involved. And they weren't my shows, but I played a crucial part in them, no matter how small of a part it was. So all the events that you table at, the presentations you make to community groups, and even international partnerships that you may have through Rotary or Lions or something would not be the same if not for you and your library's involvement or your organization's involvement. Pictured here, we've got so basically outside the information, outside the building, information tables that you are at, speakers bureaus, whenever you make a speech, conferences that you go to or present at. You can all kind of say that this is, these are events that you are a part of, even if you're not running them totally. And pictured here, we've got the youth librarian Mandy, who I mentioned before, and I are pictured at a University of Washington Information School recruiting fair, and both Mandy and I got our MLISs from that program, so it was a nice little homecoming for us. Mandy just graduated, so she knew a lot of people still, and a lot of the people who came by and were recruited to work with her for the summer reading program as a volunteer. These are people that she took classes with, so it was really nice to get that recognition for her. Annually, the World Affairs Council brings tours of librarians from around the world, and we've had librarians from Asia and Europe and Africa come and see what Rutable does. And a few times ago, our director, Danielle, met a librarian from Kenya who knew of a school that could repurpose our weeded Braille books. And so we set up I think a monthly shipment of our weeded Braille books to Kenya. And so when the first batch was delivered, as pictured here on the right, it was a big deal on their end, and we were sent a lot of photos, and so we really played this up on Facebook and trumpeted this partnership that we've created. And then since then, we've gotten some letters back, thanking us further. So just kind of as appropriate, making those letters available to interested people on our Facebook page. So it was a great relationship that was built that is continuing. And just to be clear, we're not taking credit where credit isn't due. We're just looking at our work with a 360-degree view and where we can be a champion or partner of another group and share in their successes. I think that's appropriate, and it shows that we have an impact beyond our building and beyond our state. So that's always nice to think of your library having a bigger impact than you might normally. And just remember, it can be stressful up to and including the event, but plan as best you can and have fun. And the more you do it, the more rewarding it becomes, if not easier, but it does get easier through experience. And let's see here. If you have questions or comments, let me know. A couple of years ago, I did a First Tuesday webinar on volunteering, and it's archived on the State Library website. Or if you email me at the address on the screen, I can send you the link. So it's kind of a companion piece to this one. And also around the same time, there was a consultant, about October of 2011, there was a consultant from California who presented to libraries around Washington on volunteer programs. And there was the start of an online discussion group that didn't really come to fruition. But if you email a question about events to me, I can combine any that come in through the email and give my 2 cents and maybe open it to others who also email for their input. So maybe there's kind of an ad hoc discussion going on with events and best practices. So let me know if you're ever in Seattle and you want to visit Watauble, and we'll take pictures for Facebook and make an event of it. And thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your month, and check out our Facebook page. And thanks to Carolyn and Jeremy for their help.
Okay, well, thanks. I have several questions lined up, and people, if you would like to ask some questions, please type them in now. And while you're typing, I have some to ask. And I think what first I'd like to know is have you go back to your criteria for success. And I'm particularly interested in what makes it a hit on Facebook. You said several times, oh, it was a hit on Facebook. It's a hit on Facebook. So what do you mean? What's your criteria for it being a hit on Facebook?
Well, I'm thinking if 20 people like something on Facebook, and it could be the whole album of photos, or it can be the individual photos. And I take a lot of the photos around here, and there are some other people that take excellent photos. So it's really, it's strange because we've got about 581 likes on Facebook. So it's not, we're not in the thousands, and I've seen kind of a drop now that summer has really, hit us. So everybody's on vacation and not looking at Facebook so much. But I do see a big increase in traffic on Facebook and a lot more people actually liking. Putting a face to the organization really does drive people responding to us on Facebook, because it's you're kind of working in a vacuum. Being a mail order service, and so when people respond, even if it's a small response, I mean, 20, someone that's, some major entertainment thing would go, oh, 20 people like this, that's nothing. But for us, it's a big boost, so you can really see it. So I mean, it's a relative hit, but
that's good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, and Jolena says that she's noticed lots of Chamber of Commerce and Lions Clubs are prone to help, and she thinks it's a good idea for people to suggest there, and I think that's good. The other thing, so at a criteria for Facebook was 20 or more, or somewhere around in that, and so criteria for a successful event. In other words, I noticed that Danielle was on the, and you might want to chime in, Danielle. What sort of, does your boss give you things that says these are the things I need you to hit? When you do these, programming is incredibly time-consuming, and I know as an administrator, if I have someone do programming, it is just incredibly a lot of time for, what response. So when Danielle says to you, part of your job is programming, and what are the targets she asks you to hit?
Well, Danielle's in the next office, but the door is closed. So if she wants to chime in, she can. I'll start to answer. Well, really, it's and we are kind of in a unique situation here because being a mail order service mostly, and not getting a lot of traffic. We are kind of an insular. We are kind of celebrating our volunteers and our patrons who can make it. So, having a good turnout, is 50 to 75 people. Having for the volunteer event, having a good event for the youth summer reading kickoff, I think was about 40 people, kids and adults coming, kids and their parents coming, and then for 10 squared, 30 people. So it's 3 or 4 centenarians, some of their family, maybe another 10 people total, and then another 15 or 20 people from the guest speaker and people from the state library, people from the Secretary of State's office. So really, it is relative. So we're never expecting 200 people to show up to something. So just making sure that it's inclusive, to make sure that people are aware of it. And that they are given enough time to plan, and that you're giving options. So like the clothing swap or the seasonal potluck. If someone can't make the volunteer event, they've got 4 more chances during the year to come and celebrate the end of summer with the big barbecue that we do. Or a fun thing like the clothing swap, which was just kind of, it's never been done before, and it may be done again, but so we are seen as a fun place, and that we do give recognition, and that we do include people on many different audiences we're including. So really it is so that's our measure of success. And if people are saying that was great, I loved that speaker, or thank you so much, that was a beautiful centenarian tea. So really, it is quality over quantity.
Well, I see Danielle. Thank you, Danielle. David mentioned partnerships and champion. In that vein, we want our volunteers and patrons to be proud of their library and tell other people, spreading a positive word, and the message is very important. And I think that is something I kind of wanted to stress, is to know to know why you're doing the program. I think that's very important. Is it just to bring people in, or what is it? It's because sometimes we put in a ton of work and you get 5 people. But did the word get out in the community? Do people talk about it? Is it the start of your programming? So I think you should begin to think beyond just attendance is something, and Daniel brought that up. Thank you, Danielle. I was wondering if you could explain about tactile art. What's tactile art?
Well, really, tactile art. We are partners with a lot of different state and private organizations that have blind and physically handicapped as their primary clientele and audience, and so some of them have arts programs. And so, if you are a low vision person creating a sculpture that is really just tactile, and that's how you really see it, or you're a blind person and you can do crewel stitching, which makes a beautiful piece of art that you can hang on the wall. But being told this is this color, that's this color, and you can sense that this is the silk yarn, this is the the other yarn, and creating art that is really seen by touch. That's what the tactile art program was about. Great.
Anyone else want? I have several other questions, but I thought other folks might. I'm going to scrolling up and down. Does anyone else want to have an opportunity to ask or type a question? I can see Danielle has typed in, things to be touched and experienced without vision. A photograph isn't so accessible. Yeah, that's good. Well, you talked about, how about permissions? Do you have a standard permission when you snap photographs? You take all these photographs. What permissions do you get?
Well, for the library snapshot day, there is a standard form that is being sent out by the state library department that kind of oversees it, and so we do ask people to sign something. Basically it's saying that we may use this on Facebook or in a brochure, and it's okay with you. And there's been no problem in the many years that we've been doing it. When a work group comes and I, from major corporation, and I say, hey, can I get a group photo? And they say, yeah. And I say, by the way, this is going to go on Facebook, okay? And everybody says, okay, at once. So it's not, we're not going to be using their photos in any money-making way, and they're not going to be, done in a way that is not going to help, say that they helped our library. So we're not selling something and going to paste their face on it. With kids, however, we do have some school groups come through, so I think I was, and I was ready to, have something signed or but basically some teachers kind of went, no, we didn't okay it with the parents ahead of time, so we'd rather not have any photos taken. So I will not take photos if a student group comes through. But for the pictures that we took that were a big hit on Facebook, and you can go to our Facebook page and look at the albums. There are like 66 photos up there. Taking the photos, I think all the parents and caretakers were told ahead of time that this is going to be so there is something in writing that you can do, but really if you're just kind of saying we're going to be putting these on Facebook, is that okay? And if you opt out, we will not take pictures of you and your child. So it's really it kind of moves with the event. Great.
I have another. I have done programming in the past, and only very occasionally have I used food. And I'm curious. It sounds like every program you do, you have food. And what is your reason for that?
Well, I think it brings people in, for one, because certainly if if you're inviting someone and they're going to come to the library and they don't, it's just like having a party at home. Is there going to be food there? Yeah, I'll be there. So if it's just going to be
That's great. That's a great analogy. I like that. So that was your reason. Good, because it adds a cost program. So how much do you so you expect 30 to 40 people, so how much is your food budget?
Well, the food budget is, it's really kind of, again, looking strategically at the stuff that we know we're going to be doing through the year and getting in-kind donations where we can. So the 10 Squared and the Volunteer Week are mostly in-kind donations. I'm saying, $100 or less for any, but just kind of saying we know that we have $100 to work with if needed. For the closing of the radio station that I mentioned, the farewell event, they just happen to be having a $10 large pizza promotion at a pizza chain, and so we got 10 pizzas for $100, and people were stuffed, and we had a lot left over, and people were taking stuff with them. So, and some people, some staff people brought in some salads and stuff. So it was a very nice event for very little money.
Okay, great. Well, and I noticed that Bethany says, I always have refreshments. Friends of the library help with that.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, I noticed it's 10, and lots of you have to do staff changes. So I'm going to say, is there any other questions, or people want to type anything, or because I was trying to think if I got most of my questions down. I think so. So we want to say thank you, and we really appreciate your sharing your expertise with us, David.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not seeing any other questions. Let me run up. Oh, there's some people typing. We'll see if those are questions. And we're seeing thanks, and I would echo that. And we will invite you to attend our next first Tuesdays, and that will be again on, this time it will be August 6th, and we will be sending out publicity about that, and we hope to see you there.
Do we want to mention the
thanks,
title of our
folks.
next one? Blogging Beyond Book
Go for it.
Recommendations.
Ah, yes. That's good. That will be. We're really looking forward to it. We heard this Rosemary at the Washington Library Association, and she is a paraprofessional who's going to talk to us about. She's been writing a book blog forever, and or she's been writing a blog forever, and so she's really qualified to talk to us about that. So thanks for your attending, and we will look forward to seeing many of you next
Yeah, thanks
month.
everybody.
Thank you.